G'day, it's Stranger here. It's a quiet Sunday afternoon and there's nobody around. So I thought that today I would give you a bit of a tour of my van. It's a Renault Master 2016 and I converted it in 3 months and moved into it about 2 months ago. And I've been doing the van dwelling, van life thing ever since, and it's been working out great for me. So I thought I'd give you a look inside the van and see what's what. So obviously I'm in Australia and I've got the cab with the driver's side on the right hand side of the vehicle. I haven't really done much in the cab. There's a few chores that I need to do in here. The main thing that I've added in the cab is that I have a couple of lithium batteries down underneath the passenger seat in a little steel harness frame that I made up. They're each 120 amp hours and they're each 12 volt batteries. The passenger seat was a double when I bought the van, and I had decided I wanted to get into the rear of the vehicle without exiting it, so I cut that seat in half down here and remounted it. It seemed to go pretty well. I also keep my dirty laundry in the front here. You all don't need to see that. So yeah, go ahead and climb on in. Separating the cab from the back is this bulkhead, which is made of marine grade plywood. Sandwiched in between two layers is a layer of Reflectix to insulate the cab from the back, and then there's this blackout curtain, 2-layered. It's the same on both sides, which means that the cab can get quite warm, upwards of 50 degrees, while the back still remains whatever the ambient temperature is outside. So we'll go ahead and have a peek through. It's a bit dark. Go ahead and turn some lights on. The blackout curtain I've got here, it's still on just a temporary curtain rod, and it's secured with magnets down here, which are screwed into the bulkhead, and they just sort of clip on there. That stops the curtain from flapping around while I'm driving, and keeps the sunlight out down here as well. There we go. Alright, so looking from the other direction, I've got a shower here. It's a full stand-up shower. I've got my towel and everything in there. There's also a little squeegee to keep it clean. There's a ventilation fan and a LED light. Both of those are controlled with the switches out here. And I've got a shower rose on a cord. It's actually a gardening hose. Reason I used that is because it cost $10, whereas a comparable shower rose with a on-off button would have been $40 or $50. And they do basically the same job, so yeah. The shower pan I made myself. It's a little bit dirty at the moment just because I've been walking in there, and that's basically just a marine ply base with a white paint and then 2 layers of epoxy resin. So that dries rock hard and completely waterproof. The shower drains down into a sump tank, which is holds about 10 litres, and when that fills up, there's another switch up here which pumps the sump tank out into the main grey water tank. And it's not going to do that at the moment because that tank is empty, but that would pump the contents of the sump tank into the main grey water tank, and I can carry on having my showers. There's the kitchen over here. Well, kind of a kitchen office space. I've got a little sink that I got from IKEA and a couple of faucets. The smaller faucet is supplied with water through this filter just down here, so that I always have a consistent water taste and flavour. And then the main faucet, which I use for doing dishes or whatever else I need to do. Underneath the sink there's a little cabinet with doors. These are made of MDF, just 2 thicknesses of MDF. The one on the back has this square hole cut out of it, and the one on the front has these grooves routed into it, so that it looks a little bit more like a tongue and groove board kind of design. And it's using flush mount hinges, nice nickel ones, to hold it shut. And they're also self-closing, so they don't flap around while you're driving. They take a bit of force to open, and there's 2 of them. So under here I just keep all my normal dishwashing stuff, toilet rolls, laundry powder, and normal toiletries. Down underneath that cabinet I've got my ARB fridge. It's a 35 litre fridge. It's the smallest one they make, and it's got more than enough room for anything that I need. I've secured it using this little hook here. It seemed to be the best design I could come up with. Keeps it from slinging out while I'm driving. And if we take that guy off, I also put this handle on here. It's just a handle I got from Bunnings for about $2. We can slide this guy out on a couple of 45 kilogram draw slides, and I think they're 40 millimeters or 400 millimeters long. So that extends the fridge out to a point where I can open the lid without hitting the handles over here, and that's all my beer and food. Go ahead and close that guy up again. I've also designed it in such a way that you can leave the fridge out and still get around. It's a little bit narrow, but it gives you a bit of a walkway so that you can get from one side to the other without having to pack the fridge away, because that gets a bit tedious after the 4th or 5th beer, and yeah, keeps me on my toes. Okay, over here I've got the bed. It's a fixed bed, doesn't move, stays put. The mattress is just a regular foam mattress. I don't really know the dimensions of it, but I got it from a place called Clark Rubber. If you're an Australian, then you'll know of that place. It's a king single, cut down with sort of angled corners at the back here. That was all done by Clark Rubber when I purchased it for an additional $10, which is a pretty sweet deal. They get a good cut and a good fit, and it's definitely the way to go. And I've just got regular king single sheets on the bed, and then a queen duvet cover. The artwork in the back windows, I got a little bit bored while I was making the van. I didn't seem to be making much progress, and I had these guys hanging on the wall in my house, so I thought I would cut them off and put them on the back windows. Previously underneath here is just some white fabric, which I was getting a bit tired of looking at, which was glued to a sheet of Reflectix, which ensures that it keeps the sun from heating up the back window too much, and also keeps the light inside from getting out and the light outside from getting in. This guy watches over me while I sleep. Yeah, I think I'll get a different picture. Underneath the bed I've got some wooden slats from IKEA, and they're sort of mounted into a steel and timber frame. I used slats because I knew that having ventilation underneath the bed was pretty critical in terms of getting the moisture to wick away and not mold or get damp or anything like that. And that sheet of Reflectix isn't actually a permanent fixture. I've just got my spare sheets of Reflectix and a few bits of timber and MDF and plywood sort of mounted up against the underneath of the bed, which I'll show you in a bit. They're just spare parts in case I need to work on the van in the future, as it isn't actually complete, but I'll go over the incompleteness of it shortly. Go ahead and put that guy back down. The bed's really easy to make. Yeah, nothing to it really. Underneath the bed I've got storage. Again, I made all of these cabinets myself. Essentially that's one big bulkhead going all the way across and down under there. So it goes from one side of the van to the other and from the floor all the way up to the bed. And then I cut holes for cabinet doors and cabinets to put inside of them. And the drawers here were actually my dresser drawers from home, which I took apart and reused all of the drawer hardware. I did have to mount these little guys a little bit later on, just to stop the drawers from sliding open when there's a heavy load inside the drawers. They do generally stick shut, but if you've got like, you know, a 2 kilo bag of sugar or something in there, it can tend to slide open if you stop really quickly. So in the top drawer I keep mostly food. In the middle drawer I've got some kitchen utensils, including a little blender and, you know, the usual stuff. And down the bottom here is just your junk drawer with random USB cables and cameras and whatnot. These handles were repurposed from my dresser drawers as well. I had 2 sets of them, so I used both sets of handles. Up above the drawers I've just got more food, coffee, sugar. Over here is mostly just pots and pans with a sensor light in there so I can see what I'm getting at. I really don't use much more than that. I've got a kettle, a couple of pots, a strainer and a fry pan and some mixing bowls, and I've also got my regular eating bowls and plates in there as well. It's not the best designed little spot for them, but it seems to do the job, and it doesn't bother me having to reach in there and get what I need to get. Over here on this side I've got my little single burner camp stove, which I generally take out every day, and I'll put that just across here. So that sits across the sink. It sits away from the monitor over there, and there's nothing above it which can burn. It's never really been a problem for me. And yeah, I don't really cook that much. Mostly I'm eating fresh veggies, fresh salads, things like that. But I can cook if I want to. Mostly I use this to make a coffee in the morning, or to heat some water if I feel like having a warm shower. I've also got a toaster down there because I do love my toast in the morning. That's not secured in there, but it also doesn't slide around. It just sort of fits neatly in there, which is cool. The kitchen cabinet is made of a welded steel frame that I made up. It was a little bit tricky, but I knew I needed something made of steel so that it would support the fridge and not be too bulky. And I also wasn't sure what I was going to do with this space down here. In fact, I'm kind of still not sure. So it's all open space at the moment until I decide what I'm going to do. And under here is just your normal storage drawer. That was originally going to be for a keyboard and mouse and things like that, so that I can work on whatever I need to work on, but I keep my kitchen utensils in there. This is a little fabric container thing that I got from IKEA. It's sort of made of a cardboard upholstered thing. I've no idea what it is. And I cut slots into it with a Stanley trimmer to get my cutlery to stay put when I am driving, and it does a pretty good job of that. It took me about 10 minutes to make, so yeah, good stuff. And I've also got my chopping boards and glasses, and I'm sure you've all seen the plastic glasses that look exactly like real glass, and so when you knock them over they don't break. These aren't them, these are actual glass. I do like to live dangerously, and I'm also too lazy to find the plastic ones. This stool I got from IKEA. It's pretty cool. It was about 60 bucks, and it's adjustable, height adjustable. I don't really adjust it though. I thought I would adjust it more than I do. It sits at this height, and that's the perfect height for me to be sitting at my laptop and doing work. It didn't have the foam and fabric on top. I did the upholstery on that, and it's pretty shitty. Like, it's not great, but it works. So yeah. Coming up here, I've got some light switches over here. Those are just a couple of LED lights. I've got 2 sets of 4 lights up here. These are a warm white light, which sort of light up the main living space down here, but they don't light up the bed, which is kind of what I was going for. I don't really need my bed to be lit up by spotlights, especially when I'm lying in bed. I don't want to be staring up at these terribly bright lights. And then turning those guys off, turning these guys on. I've got 4 bright white lights over the kitchen counter so that I can see what I'm doing if I'm making dinner or doing some paperwork or whatever. Over here I've got the switch for my water pump. I used an eliminated switch there because I kept leaving it on, and I'm not sure if the pump continually uses power even when it's not, pumping, but I was a little bit worried that I might end up with a water leak in this whole assembly down here while I wasn't here, and it would just start pumping water out. It's just a regular diaphragm pump, so when you turn the water on, it goes, and when you turn it off, it stops. The sink drains down into a little drain waste valve there, and that flows down the garden hose into the back of the van, which we'll have a look at in just a minute. The floor is vinyl, self-adhesive vinyl flooring, and I was really worried about the floor when I went to put it in. I put it off for way too long, and it was one of the last things I did because I kind of wanted to have everything in place and then put the floor in so that I wasn't wasting vinyl flooring underneath things that didn't need it. In the end, it turned out to be fantastic. I got it done in a couple of hours, and no worries. So yeah, very happy about that. The shower curtain I also got from IKEA, very cheap. It was too long and too wide when I bought it, so I trimmed it down. And the one thing that I wasn't really able to do well enough was sew these seams on it, so I did get my mum to do that for me. Thanks, Mum. And I also got my mum to sew these foam cushions. I cut the foam and she did the upholstery. Looks pretty good. Those are all 3 separate pieces. and the sofa is made of timber. It's a bit of a complex build because it did have to fit in a bit of a weird shape. I've got the wheel well back there, and I also didn't have a cushion on that end because it would get in the way of this drawer, well, this cabinet door. And underneath the seat I've got sort of long-term storage. This is where I keep things like you know, food, paper towels, things that you will need but you don't really need right away, extra beer in case you run out, some extra sheets, a couple of fans, there's a hammock, paperwork, there's a little laptop down there, and some bits and bobs for the mains electrical stuff. And yeah, at the bottom there is a rubber mat which I also got from Clark Rubber. I ended up getting a metre, I think, of this stuff for the boot of the vehicle, and the leftovers just happened to fit perfectly in here, and also left me with a bit for my doormat, so very good. There's nothing holding this lid in place, it's just a bit of marine ply with pine runners, which I'm struggling to get back in. There it goes. Yeah, and the front of the sofa is the same kind of style as the cabinet doors. It's 2 sheets of MDF. The one at the back is routed with these slots in it, and the one at the front has the cutouts with the little feature angle bits in it, and it does look like it's 2 separate pieces, but that was just sort of cut in there with a file, a small file, to make it look as though if it were professionally joined. And yeah, I think I kind of like that style. On the walls I've got nothing, they're blank, but I will put something on the walls when I decide what's going to look good. They're 6mm marine ply, which is sort of bent to conform to the walls of the van, and behind that is a layer of Reflectix and then a layer of rock wool as well. Behind the roof, which is actual tongue and groove boards, 12mm I think. Those are mounted directly to the ribs, the metal ribs underneath the roof, and again above that is Reflectix and rock wool. There's still quite a lot of bare metal showing. That's again because I haven't quite finished everything I need to do. Mounted up against the wall, I've got my 27-inch monitor, which I use as a secondary monitor for my laptop. I don't have a TV aerial, and I'm not going to get one. That's used for doing work and watching movies, and it seems to work great. It's a very low wattage as well, it doesn't use a whole lot of power. And I've got this block up here, which has a couple of USB outlets. There's a voltage meter on here as well, and I've also got an on-off switch. This little guy up here is powered by USB, and that's just fed by that there. Over here I've got the mains power for the monitor and for the laptop. On the door I've got some mirrors from IKEA. These are hexagonal mirrors that you buy in a kit, and the reasoning was that the whole side of the door is curved. You can kind of see that there, and it's very hard to fit a flat mirror to a curved surface, so I thought I'd get these little mirrors and fix them to the wall in such a way that they conform with that curve, and also if one happens to come loose and fall off, well, I've only lost one, I haven't lost my whole mirror. Up at the front of the vehicle I've got my fantastic fan, which does the same thing that every other fantastic fan does, and it's pretty good. I've got a smoke alarm up here, and just above the cab there's a sort of narrow storage space which I didn't really know what else to do with, so I've got that crammed full of winter clothes and spare blankets and sheets and coats and things like that. Yeah, nothing super interesting back there. I've also used wet area panels, which I got from Bunnings, because the shower butts right up against the side of the van, and so it had to be curved. These wet area panels are made of acrylic, and they do curve quite nicely, so that's what I've used now. At the back of the vehicle I've got a set of 3 computer fans, and they're pulling air in from outside and they're pulling it through a filter. That kind of helps to get a cross ventilation breeze going to the extraction fan up there, and they're controlled with this little guy down here. They've also got a little controller here, which if I press the button, that one, they cycle through different coloured LED lights, which doesn't provide a huge amount of light, but it's nice for a bit of ambience depending on what you happen to be doing, and they provide enough light to get around the van without, you know, turning on the main LED lights. So quite like those. And down here, just next to the entrance, is a little trapdoor where I keep all of my electrics. So I have a 1000-watt inverter there. I've got a PWM solar controller, which I will upgrade to a MPPT controller at some point. I've got my fuse box and my isolation switch, and my batteries are back there under the passenger seat. All of the wiring exits down here and goes around to the back of the shower, and then goes up into the roof where it's distributed to its various appliances. The reason I put all of the electrical components in that little trapdoor is because I wanted them to be venting their heat into the cab rather than into my living space. And if the inverter does get a bit warm and its fan starts spinning up, I'm insulated from that noise by the bulkhead in the front there. Yeah, okay, so I guess the last thing is to show the boot where I keep all of my tools and whatnot, and boy, here we go. Oh boy, okay, so I didn't show the front of the kitchen counter. That's done in the same style as under the sofa, with MDF features cut into it, and the exposed kitchen counter frame. Alright, so onto the boot. You're going to be amazed at how many mountain bikes I've fit in here. There's none at all. I don't mountain bike. So that's the boot space underneath the bed, and you can also see my spare parts down here. So I've got the same fabric I used to upholster the sofa, a bit of foam, some MDF, Reflectix, yeah, all sorts of things. Over here is my water storage. I've got 2 25-litre drums, each of them isolated from the other if you need to, so that you can run entirely on one and keep the second one as reserve. And I've also got the main fill hose, which is tucked up there, which you can plug into another tank if you did decide to add one, and you can effectively double that that 50 litre combined water storage. Down here is the main grey water. Nothing special about it. Holds 20 litres. Has a little fill gauge up here. It also functions as a vent so that as water's coming in, the air inside the tank doesn't vent into the living space. Got a fire extinguisher here and another one in the cab as well. Over here is pretty much all of the tools that I use to build the van, in that grey box, and I'm not going to drag it out to show you, but that's all my power tools and hand tools, angle grinders, things like that. And over here I've got some little fabric bags which contain spare parts, so that's all hardware and mounting stuff. This is all solar and electrical stuff, and this is all plumbing stuff. So if I do have an improvement or repair I need to make, I have all the parts that I need to do that, as well as all the tools. It's a bit of a pain to drag it all out, but that's probably not going to happen that often. I've only had to do it once, and it mostly just sits there and keeps me company. Basically the rest of the space here, except for the cleaning supplies I've got there, is empty space. And I use that to transport stuff for work, so I often transport boxes and things like that, and I can fit quite a bit in there under the bed. Yeah. Alright, moving on to the improvements that I still need to make. They're all pretty much inside the vehicle. As you can see, I've got a suitcase on the bed which I shift down in front of the door when I'm sleeping in the bed. That's because I don't really have any good clothing storage, and all of my books are stored up the front here in the overhead compartments, and some on the dash, and that's because I don't have a bookshelf either. I simply haven't decided what I want to do back here with the walls and above the bed. I'm thinking that I'll have a bookshelf across the back there, hopefully not blocking these fans too much, and then over here at the foot of the bed I'm hoping to put some clothing storage, but I'm probably not going to go too overboard with that. It's pretty much just going to be a pigeonhole kind of deal, where I've got a single sheet of MDF, large cabinet with holes cut into the front of it, and in each of those pigeonholes I will store my various clothes. The space underneath the bed here was intended to be for hanging clothes, so jackets and pressed shirts, things like that. Turns out I don't really have that many of them, and I don't wear them that much, so I didn't use it for that purpose. And if I do need to, I will probably find a spot for them elsewhere. That's pretty much it. I use my van for making videos and doing writing, as well as various other projects and tasks. I also have a full-time job and study at university, so I spend a lot of time in here on my laptop doing stuff. Oh, I also think I forgot to mention that with my solar setup here, I have 300 watts of solar, 3 panels, and they're wired in series so that they're wired in parallel, so that I typically get about 16 to 20 volts. At the moment I've got 14.6 coming in, which seems to be more than enough to charge the batteries to a decent level. And yeah, I've never really had any power issues other than not knowing what to do with it all. So yeah, that's pretty much it for my my video guide here. Any changes that I make in the future coming up, I will document and let you guys know. Thanks for watching.